Welcome to another episode of Game Changers for Government Contractors. I am your host, Michael LeJeune. And if you are not familiar with me or the podcast, let me give you a quick intro. Then we'll dive into our topic today and talk about silent influencers in government contracting. I have been in this industry for going on 25, 26 years. Started off in the military, made my way into government contracting right out of the military, and then helped build a government contracting business up to about $12 million a year, about 18 months, then got out, started doing coaching and consulting. And then about a decade or so ago, my business partner, Josh Frank, and I started RSM Federal up with a focus of helping government contractors master the art and science of government contracting. We have since helped a little over 25,000 companies achieve a little over $14.5 billion in government contracts. That's a lot. So I think we know a little bit about this industry. If you're watching online, you'll see a handful of the books behind me that we've written, all of them bestsellers. And our focus has really been just providing value for this market. We've been doing the podcast now going on our 11th year, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. If you're listening to 25, we love doing the podcast. It provides a ton of value in the market. If you ever think of a topic that you'd like us to cover, you can email us at any given time, and we will definitely take those topics into consideration. I'd love it if you connect with me on LinkedIn and get more content from us, because we are constantly putting out free content on LinkedIn and other social media platforms so that you can grow your business and you don't have to subscribe to anything or anything like that. Like it's free stuff. So with that, let me jump in and talk about the silent influencers in government contracting. So most people know about the public influencers that are out there. Today, I'm going to talk about the people that are happening behind the scenes, because my first point for you is that not all power is visible. One of the things you'll find, and this is at every agency, is I often find these subject matter experts that are behind the scenes who are analysts or they're procurement managers or they're seemingly nobodies to the outside world who have been at an agency for going on a billion years, right? Like I say that tongue in cheek, but they've been there forever. They know where all the bodies are buried, and they have a massive amount of influence over what's happening at the agency and what gets procured. For example, somebody may say, hey, we're thinking about, implementing a new tool. Let's go get Bob's input on this. And Bob will say, hey, I tried that and I hate it. Like, oh, well, that's the end of that. It's just how quickly it happens. So a lot of times there are people that aren't visible that are kind of pulling some strings behind the scenes, or they are focused on like shutting down things, or they're moving agendas forward. And they may not have a title that looks like they have influence, but they do. So how do you find somebody like that? In fact, how do you find a lot of the silent influencers that I'm going to talk about today? Well, boots on the ground is the number one strategy. If you have employees on site or employees that are on contract, those are often going to be the people that know where the bodies are buried. They're going to know where the Bobs are. They're going to know who those people are, what their names are, what they like, what they don't like. They're going to know about that because that person has stepped on their toes more than once. So looking at your internal staff and saying, hey, who are the silent influencers in the organization? Give me the rundown on them. That's something you need to be doing. The other thing is looking at incumbent staff. So anytime there are incumbent staff, even if they are not your employees, but you know of some people on the team that are working there, you can reach out on LinkedIn. You can reach out for a quick phone call and say, hey, I'm just curious, who are some of the silent influencers there? People that are have an enormous amount of influence, but don't necessarily have the title that describes that. And if you build a relationship with those people that are on site, even if they're not your staff, you will likely be in a position where you can get some information out of them like that. So number one thing here is to understand is not all power is visible. There's a lot of SMEs and people that have been there their entire career that are pulling some strings. So those are some big silent influencers. The other ones are end users and program managers. These folks help define the mission and help shape the scope before an RFP comes out. And so, again, even with the end users, they're at different levels, but end users are often feeding information up to program managers who are then helping write proposals or influence proposals. And those people may be the folks you need to get a hold of. And so that's why we ask our staff, who are the influential end users, program managers, all those type of people that are important to this. You can also ask your contracting officers, your small business offices. You can reach out to those folks and ask to be introduced to program managers or end users, things like that. But there's another category there of people that are often silent influencers. Then you have like your technical evaluators, people that their names are going to show up on proposals and things like that, where they have reviewed things. It's a little bit harder to find those people. And once you have submitted something and you have those names, then those are people you want to make, an end around and come back to later on, but you're not necessarily going to know them right out of the gate. So you want to find out who the technical evaluators are on proposals as often as you can, so that you know who some of these people are that are basically giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down. One of the main ones that you're all going to hear about is your contracting specialists, contracting officers. These people are prepping paperwork and shaping the acquisition strategy. They're a lot more influential than you think, because they could be the ones saying, hey, this is going to come out small business. Hey, this is going to come out, SDVOSB, woman owned, whatever it may be. So those contracting specialists are often extremely influential, even if they say they're not. Because sometimes they say, it's just my job to make the acquisition happen. Well, it's your job to define the strategy and work through it. So they may not be influential in the whole thing, but they may be very influential on how it's actually executed. Now, we're in an interesting time in government contracting as I record this. This is the summer of 2025. A lot of things are shifting. A lot of you know of the OSDBU or OSDBU, OSBPs, basically small business offices. A lot of you are familiar with those. There's just small business representatives, small business specialists, whatever you want to call them. A lot of you are familiar with those folks. I want you to understand that some of them are not going to be around for very long. There's offices closing and things like that. We're already hearing the rumors, the rumbles. We're hearing people shut down, but there's going to be some that stay. And hopefully the ones that stick around are going to be the ones that are influential. Now, understand that over the years, we have watched this, and it really is this microcosm of society. Some are amazing and some are not. Some are influential and some are not. I have seen some, and one of them is an example of, there's a person over at Scott Air Force Base that this person is extremely influential. And anytime an opportunity hits the street without going small business, they go back and examine it. And they're like, whoa, hold up, red flag on the field. I know of 2 small businesses that could do this. This needs to be brought back in and sit back out as small business or 8A or whatever. Some are very influential like that and some aren't. You need to do your research. You need to have the conversation with those small business offices and learn who is influential in your market and who isn't, because they have the power to do stuff like that. So next time you see an opportunity hit the street and you're like, whoa, why didn't this come out small business? You can reach out to that small business specialist and say, hey, did you know about this? Can you do anything to help us? And maybe they can, maybe they can't. But sometimes those people are very, very influential. I've already talked a little bit about the incumbent staff, your embedded consultants and advisors and people like that. There's also like the legal and policy advisors. So there are people writing rules behind the scenes that shape evaluations. There's also lobbyists and things like that you can lean on. I'm not a huge fan of the lobbyist approach for a handful of reasons that I won't get into in this podcast, because it's not often something that is easily repeatable. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, and it's not necessarily easily repeatable. That's probably the main thing. There's other reasons. But there are other legal and policy advisors that can often shape things. I know of a handful of attorneys in DC that have the ear of Congress. They have the ear of certain agencies. And if they make a call to make a suggestion, it gets taken very seriously. So you need to know who those people are. And the only way you're going to know is you ask around and have conversations with people. The more people you meet, the more you network and go to conferences, the more you're going to learn who some of these people are. There's also the agency leadership. So believe it or not, your deputy directors, your CIOs, your directors, those people are often very influential. They will often come off as hands off, but I have told the story many, many times about how when we first got going, we sent this packet to the White House, to every secretary and deputies, director, undersecretary. We sent a physical copy, an email copy, and a fax copy to everybody under the sun. And the only response I got was from Andy Card, George Bush, is the chief of staff at the time. And he said, "Hey, appreciate what you're trying to do. The president is not the right guy for this. Here's this 3-star general that you need to go speak to." And that letter would then open doors for me every day of the week. It was very influential. And so even though I wasn't able to get the president's input on something, or some of these deputy directors, secretaries, things like that, I was able to get a letter that I could use as basically a free pass in any agency that I wanted to go and talk to. I basically had this free pass to do. So you never know who's going to be able to give you one of those free passes so that you can go and talk to anybody you need to. The other one is teaming partners. Your teaming partners, if they have access, if they have boots on the ground, it may not be your boots on the ground. It could be their boots on the ground. It could be them on contract. Those are folks that can significantly help guide you and guide you to the right decision makers. So you never know. And if your teaming partner is doing a crazy good job with an agency, the odds are those folks are going to be very influential for you, like extremely influential. And so I have been in situations where we were doing such a good job that the agency came to us and said, "Hey, have you ever worked with this company? Have you ever worked with this software? Hey, have you ever worked with this solution?" And gotten our input. And that input determined whether they went forward with a contract or not. So I've been in that position as a teaming partner like that. The other thing is there are some former government employees that are often influencers. You just got to really test the waters with those relationships. Be very careful about how you employ people like that, whether it is a former, officer or a formal SES, whatever it may be. They could be a former whatever, but they may not be liked at the agency. So be very careful when you are looking at those types of relationships, especially if you're thinking of bringing them on board as a consultant or something like that. The main way you're going to find these silent influencers is talking to people. You need to get out. You need to talk to people. Yes, you can Google things. You can look at agency org charts. You can look at FPDS. You can FOIA certain information. But when you get out and talk to people, you're going to industry events, you're talking to teaming partners, you're talking to people on site, that's where you're going to really find who the influencers are. And I would suggest almost like making a murder board like you see on the crime shows where they have like the agency and what you need to get to, and you're pulling the little red strings around. Make an influence map of who you know at the agency. Like, do we know 1, 2, 3, 17 people at the agency? And once you know that, then you can quickly say, okay, we have enough influence at this agency. We have built enough currency, enough relationship to be able to actually, influence an acquisition. Then you're on the right track. So get out there, look for these silent influencers. There's a lot more of them out there than you can possibly think. So if you got a lot out of today's episode, I have a favor to ask. I would love for you to go give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. One of the things about Apple Podcast is a lot of reviews get denied, just like they do on Amazon. So it takes a lot of people going there and actually asking or putting a review out there in order for us to get those. And the second thing I'll say is if you really enjoyed this, we have our Inner Circle group that meets every Wednesday at 1:00. And I would say, hey, if you're not part of that group, you should join it. It's about $250 a month to be part of that group. We go through stuff like I just went through with you in this episode today. Then we transition to Q&A, and I'll stay on usually as much as 30 minutes after the hour just to make sure we answer all the questions. So it's a group coaching type of format, and it's really, really valuable. So if you enjoyed today, I recommend you go and join Inner Circle so that you can do that. If you have questions or want to know how to do that, you can reach out to me. And again, one last plug for the podcast. If you love the podcast, please go out there and give us a quick review on it. It helps the podcast tremendously with its growth and help us reach more people just like yourself who enjoy it. Thank you, and we'll see you next episode.